Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 27th, 2021 work session of the Harnett County Board of Commissioners. And would like to recognize Commissioner Mark Johnson, who will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation.
We'll all stand and face our flag, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing, please. Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning. It's such a beautiful morning. We appreciate you giving us this morning, and the rain over the weekend helped out so much. As a body of county people, we just come to you and ask you to let us make the right decisions for the right reasons this morning and help out our beautiful county as we make plans and struggle through some hardships with the COVID that are still around. We ask for your blessings for each one of us in this room, for you to touch our hearts. And we thank you for such a beautiful day. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Next on the agenda, we have a report, Mr. Royer, Harnett County Commissioner of Women and Youth update.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good morning.
Good morning.
Coming back to you all today regarding the Harnett County Commission on Women and Youth update to the bylaws. Originally, this was discussed back in November, which I believe everybody, when it was on the conference call at the time that it was discussed. We had further discussions with the commission after we had a chance to hear from Ms. McCoy about the history of the commission. And at the time, the recommendation was made to make one change to the bylaws from what was presented regarding, I guess, the duties of the chair of the Commission for Women and Youth. Essentially, we want to add the requirement that the chair come to the Board of Commissioners at least once a year, or, as required by the board, to give an update on what's going on with the Commission for Women and Youth, as well as any direction that the Board of Commissioners wishes to impart on the chair at that time. What I will do is, just to refresh everyone's memory, is I'll just go through the changes, the substantive changes to the bylaws from their current form, if that's okay. Under Article 3, membership, it currently consists of 13 members. That was increased to 15 members. The makeup of those members will be 5 members that are appointed, one of each of the commissioners' districts, and then 10 members, which is an increase from the current 8, will be appointed at large. Moving on to Section 7 of Article 3. The notification of absences for the commission, that was requested to be changed just based on how it's currently in practice now. The current requirement of letting the secretary know that you'll be absent is just not happening. And so instead, what a lot of members are doing are just letting other members know that I'm not going to be there today for whatever reason, and they're just taking care of that at the meeting. So this is just more of a practical change to, I guess, really make the bylaws conform with what's happening on a meeting by meeting basis. Under Article 4, we are deleting the treasurer from the officers, as was discussed last time. The Harnett County Commission on Women and Youth is an advisory board. They're not a legal entity, therefore they cannot hold essentially county funds. That all needs to go through the finance director. And so the proposal here is to delete the treasurer, because essentially the treasurer's functions will be fulfilled by the county finance office. In Section 2 of officers, there has been, and there currently is, a 1-year service requirement to become chairman. That will remain. The change here is that all other members will now be eligible to hold the other officers other than the chairmanship. That currently requires a 6-month period that you've been an active member of the commission. So that will change to where it's open to anybody now. Under Section 4, reads that no member shall hold the same office for more than 2 consecutive terms. That is change from, the exception is that the Board of Commissioners can ask that an officer stay on for more than 2 consecutive terms. The Harnett County Commission on Women and Youth are asking that that request and approval be made by the commission themselves. So instead of coming to y'all, if the secretary would like to hold 3 consecutive terms for y'all's approval, that they could just say, yeah, that'd be okay. The change that was asked to be made after the last time we discussed this was as we get into Article 5, the duties of the officers. Currently, it is silent on the requirement to provide periodic updates to the Board of Commissioners. It was asked that that now be a requirement of the chair, and so that was added as subsection I of Section 1, which discusses the obligations of the chair. So now with that in there, they'll be required to provide periodic updates to the board during noticed meetings. As we get into Section 4, since we are getting rid of the treasurer position, since those duties are currently filled by the finance office, we are just deleting any reference to treasurer, and so we're just deleting that Section 4 altogether. As we get into Article 6 of the meetings, there's just a procedural change with regards to quorum. We still have the simple majority to establish quorum. However, the change now is that we are removing what exists as a half-hour requirement. So essentially, the meeting's called to order, quorum doesn't exist. They wait around a half hour to decide if quorum. They wait around a half hour to determine if quorum can be met or not. This just changes it to say that a simple majority of members' presence constitutes a quorum. Under Article 7, essentially Section 3 gets rid of the requirement for the executive committee to meet annually. It still allows for executive committee meetings to be called. However, it gets rid of the annual meeting, or the twice annual meeting requirement. Excuse me, let me backtrack. I skipped over one there. Section 1 of the executive committee. Currently, it consists of the executive committee as well as the past chairman. The commission has asked that executive committee be made up of the current officers. And then under Article 8 committees, it appears that they are removing the committees for communications and grants. They are currently 2 separate committees. It appears that if you move on to Section 3, that they've essentially taken the requirements of those 2 committees and they've combined it all under the Public Relations Committee. So it's not really changing any obligations or duties, it's just bringing those functions under one committee. And then the big one, which I know the Board of Commissioners always wants to make sure is in there so that they continue to have oversight and control over their advisory boards, is a change to how amendments are done. Currently, as we're working to clean up with a lot of other of our boards and committees, the ability to amend bylaws is with the boards and committees themselves as opposed to the Board of Commissioners. This change would put that control back in the hands of the Board of Commissioners to, I guess, provide a little more flexibility with making this board in their vision. And so if they see a need for a change, they can just easily address that. Y'all could easily address that. And those are the substantive changes. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any. I think most of y'all have heard this before, but I will I'm available to answer any questions that the commissioners may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rohr. Anyone have any questions you'd like to ask this morning, or any comments? Okay, hearing none, thank you. Appreciate your hard work and the update this morning.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And would you like us to put this on the agenda for Monday, on the consent agenda to approve the bylaws?
I'm good with it. Anybody have any objections to that? No, I think that'd be fine. Okay, next we have a discussion of the Harnett Regional Jetport and/or FBO discussion. Mr. Bryce?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well.
Morning.
So staff is prepared to answer any questions that you may have. I'm going to call on Mr. Barry Blevins in just a second, kind of give a brief overview of the airport, kind of where we've been, where we're at, and kind of what we're up against. As you're well aware, as far as the FBO is concerned, you voted as a board about a month and a half ago to kind of do away with that contract and kind of see kind of where we're at and what future looks like for our airport as far as economic development opportunities and other things as far as ownership versus possible FBO, RFP. So if you will, I'm going to ask Barry to come and kind of give an overview, and then the staff is prepared to answer any questions that you may have, concerns, ideas. So we'll just kind of get into a discussion and kind of see how you feel, if that's okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I was busy last week and at an airport class and ran all the way through Saturday, so I don't have any presentation. I do have some notes that I could give you when the time comes if you have any questions and how to move that forward. So the airport, for a real quick history of it, the airport started to be built. The concept of the airport for Harnett County was actually in the late 60s. And then it took almost until late 70s to actually get a place where it's located now. And the reason that is because the FAA wouldn't sign off on different locations. They wanted to put it in Dunn and couldn't get it close enough because at the time the military was taking a lot of the flying zones away from them. So the FAA settled on the current location. So it was finalized, just, money was put aside for it, and then it opened in 1982. As far as FBOs, the county has never ran the airport. It's always hired somebody to run the fuel operations and oversee aircraft coming in and out, which is, the public aircraft is really what it's built for. So it started with the gentleman who built two hangars, one of them being where the Warren Aviation hangar is, and then the one right beside it, which is right beside the terminal. That's where the first constructions were at. And that person walked off the job, and then another person who just happened to fly there a lot called up my predecessor, Tony Wilder, and asked him, your doors are open, the locks are missing. So he kind of took it over, and he ran it for several years. I can't say he made a profit or nothing because he was up against a lot of things, but he worked a lot of years, and the reason I don't mention names is because he's passed, and he was good for the airport. Then Warren Aviation took it over, and I will admit Warren Aviation added a lot of value, changed the concept. It was a good old boys flying club. When I first took over, it was a good old boys flying club, and Warren Aviation wanted to get involved. And the reason I believe they wanted to get involved, at that time we had a lot of gliders in there. And you can't keep gliders from flying. I mean, the FAA says you can't tell somebody not to fly, but when you're bringing in jets, gliders get in the way, and they have the right of way. So when a jet's burning a lot of Jet A fuel, which is costly, and having to make turns around waiting for a glider to land, it was getting upset. So I think, I can remember talking to Mr. Warren at the time. They were very upset about that. So I think that's one of the reasons they engaged, and they did bring a professional look to it. There's no doubt about it. They've done a lot of good things. And so up to the point now where we're at, which we have approximately 6.5 weeks to make a decision, the board make a decision whether they want to continue FBO operations and putting out an RFP, or if for the county to take the staff take over the operation. And is there any questions on it?
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Any questions for Mr. Blevins? Okay. All right. Hearing none. Is that Anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Price?
If there's any concerns at all, Chris Appel has spent a lot of time on this from a legal standpoint. Barry has a lot of history out there. So if there's anything at all that you'd like to share, please do so. We'll be glad to answer.
Sure, and I appreciate the information you put together and sent to us. That was quite informative, and we may well have questions going forward before a final decision is made. But anyway, thank you for that. Thank you for your efforts, and I do want to follow up Mr. Blevins' comments about Mr. Warren and the good job that his company did in really changing the direction of our airport, and as you so well stated, really bringing a level of professionalism to the airport. Having lived right beside it for close to 40 years, I well remember the gliders. I remember thinking that they had disappeared and really didn't know why at the time. So it makes a lot of sense now. But thank you for sharing that. And again, this board, I cannot speak for the whole board, but at least for me, I do acknowledge the contribution that Mr. Warren and Warren Aviation made in stepping our jetport actually up to the next level. And I think that's where we are today. We need to make a decision on where we're going to go forward to even move it to the next level.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
just one comment to the board as well. If you're leaning toward an RFP, time is of the essence.
Yes, sir.
So I know you know that, but it's June 15th will be here before you blink your eyes. So we just want to make sure we're prepared, that we understand your direction and what leadership you'd like to see the airport turn into. So if you could kind of give us an answer on that, we certainly would appreciate it.
I appreciate that. We obviously cannot give you an answer today, but it will be on the agenda for next week.
Good deal. Thank you, sir.
Ms. McCoy?
Commissioner McCoy, I have a question. How many airports in the state of North Carolina are run by the county?
I don't have that number. There, most of the small G airports, we're considered a local. Almost all of them that I've contacted are either getting ready for the county to run or not. And there's a couple reasons why they do that. Small airports, generally, like ours, generally only sell fuel. And they may have some maintenance folks there and those kind of things. So I don't have the exact number, even though I tried to get all those numbers. I do have the examples. Surrey County, Mount Airy just took over theirs in January. Duplin County is run by the county. Stanley County is run by the county, and they're a larger airport. Of course, Johnston is. There's a lot that are run that way, and for an FBO to make money, they have to invest other things besides selling fuel. And we already have maintenance out there. We've had several people that's interested in actually leasing aircraft. They're actually out there now. Now they just want to have an agreement with the county where they can lease. So those kind of things is what an FBO does. And so it'll be a limited group of people. If we do an RFP, there honestly will be a limited group of people that'll look at it. And whoever they are, I mean, we'll work with them either way. The success of an FBO and the county is based on really what is that ambassador for Harnett County? That's the person that we need to concern ourselves with. I mean, as a county for that airport. So, but I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers. I just know generally when I'm speaking to people in the North Carolina Airport Association, when I'm talking to a group at the national levels. And I have stats, and I'll just give this to you anyway so you guys can review it. But essentially, the majority of FBOs, private FBOs in the country, the majority of them are run by the county or the sponsor, as they call it. And the reason is most of the FBOs work at larger airports like a Feb, where they can sell fuel more, they can do more stuff. There are smaller airports that have commercial service. So that's the difference. But I wouldn't take nothing, like I said, I wouldn't take nothing away from Warren because he did bring a professional and gave everybody another way to look at it and seen the opportunities that the county can prosper from. That's a good question. I do apologize. I don't have those exact numbers.
Okay, you're fine.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. Anything else? Any other questions, Mr. Blevins? Okay, thank you so much, and Ms. Stewart, if you will, put that on the agenda for next week. Okay, and next we have to discuss a proposed conflict of interest policy. Mr. Appel?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I present this to you today because the county has actually never had a county-wide conflict of interest policy. Obviously, there's a number of things that we do or positions that are governed by conflicts of interest, whether it be statute, rules, regulations, they're out there, but we've never had a standard set of rules for the county. And want to present it now because I do get questions from time to time. I've had some more recently, so it's just prompted me to go ahead and present a county-wide policy to you all today. And this policy, again, would apply to everyone, agents, employees, boards, commissions, committees, whatnot. This would be county-wide. And again, the purpose, as it stated in there, is to establish guidelines for ethical standards of conduct for all employees, officials, agents, and so on. Now, the key, as you go on, it goes through the coverage, it covers the definitions. The main part of this policy, which helps clear up some of the confusion or a lot of questions I get, are one, what's an immediate family member? So that's defined on page 2, which is just the spouse and children of county official, employer, agent. That is a different definition than what's in our personnel ordinance when we talk about immediate family members, because that's very much broader. So this, again, defines what immediate family member would be. And the other key part of the definition here is interest. That, again, the questions I get is this, do they have an interest in this situation? Again, this clarifies that they'll have an interest if any person in their immediate family gains a benefit, any business entity in which they're an officer or director, any business entity in which an excess of 5% of stock or legal or beneficial ownership is controlled or owned directly or indirectly by them, and then any nonprofit organization in which they currently serve as an officer, director, or board member. So again, I've fielded questions regarding who's an immediate family member, if they are part of another business or nonprofit, whether they have a conflict of interest. And so this, again, clarifies some of those questions I've gotten. And then going on to the policy, again, it just defines the things for this policy is interest in contract or agreement, use of an official position. If you have a conflict or a potential conflict, disclosing that conflict, incompatible service, receipt of gifts, giving special treatment to others, and you're reporting violations and in any discipline that would come from it. So again, a lot of this follows state guidelines, other policies, and so on. There's nothing out in here that's really different than anywhere else. But again, it's just important that we have a county-wide policy. I think we've gone through some grants that we got, and they want to see a conflict of interest. So I think some departments have kind of developed their own. Again, this will centralize it, develop one policy that everyone can follow and point to. If you have any questions about any particular section of it, I'm happy to answer those questions. But again, that's just very kind of a brief overview of what this is.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much. Any objection to putting this on the consent agenda for next week? Ms. Stewart, let's put this on the consent. Thank you. Next, we have a discussion. I think Mr. Johnson, excuse me, you have something else?
I was on the next one. I was just going to be.
Yep, anyway, yeah, okay, you're reporting on that. Ms. Johnson, I believe, mentioned this last week to discuss some proclamations. Mr. Pell, I'll let you go ahead and take it from there.
So per Commissioner Johnson, you want to adopt proclamations honoring certain individuals, which would be 911 workers, medical personnel, and Harnett County volunteers. And so what's in your package today are 3 separate proclamations that do honor these groups of individuals for the work that they've done during the COVID-19 pandemic and the harms the harm they're confronted with and still having to report to work every day. And then the volunteers, again, volunteering their time and putting themselves at any risk or helping anywhere that's needed. Now, Commissioner Johnson, I guess I'll direct it to you. I know you said 911 workers. The way I did write it is recognizing emergency responders, because that's under the FFCRA is how, we define emergency responders, your EMS workers, your jail staff, your deputies, and so on. You want to make sure that's the direction that you wanted when you said 911 workers. So
you put them all into one proclamation?
For the emergency responders, I did. So I've got the
Okay.
proclamation for healthcare providers, which is your PAs, doctors, nurses, and so on. Emergency responders, which is, again, your EMS, police, jail staff, and so on. And then you had a third one for the volunteers. So if you want me to separate out, I can, but I just wasn't sure if you want me to cover
And I
all
just
those
want
individuals.
to interrupt for a moment. It was not in your packet. These proclamations were not in
Oh,
your
I'm
packet.
sorry.
So we were trying to just kind of let Chris go over it with you first to find out which direction you wanted to go in before we gave them to you.
My apologies. I
So-
did not know they were,
That's
I
okay.
forgot they were not in your packet. But yeah, it's 3 separate proclamations that I drafted. Again, one's healthcare providers, which, under, I include physicians, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, nurses, medical assistants.
My intention was, when I suggested this, to have the 9/11 workers separate in a separate proclamation, because they have a national 9/11 workers day. So I would like to have those separated from the other ones, if that's possible.
So when you say 911, are you talking about just
The dispatchers,
the dispatchers?
yes.
Okay. Do you, okay, so I've got health providers, I'll do the 911 dispatchers, I'll do the volunteers. Do you want to include any of the other emergency personnel, or do you want to just do the 911?
I would like to see the 911 workers, the dispatchers, emergency dispatchers, in one proclamation, a separate proclamation for the medical personnel.
Okay,
The doctors and nurses that work so hard, they deserve their own.
sure.
And I'm not sure about the Harnett County volunteers. I think somebody else suggested that one.
Sure. I guess
Yeah,
my,
yes, Commissioner McCoy recommended that one at the end of the work session. So
Let me just see if I can channel us a little bit here. My understanding initially, Chris, and what you presented is that this was targeted toward respondents for the COVID pandemic. Is that correct?
correct, the way I drafted them is
Right.
to honor those who have had to work during the COVID-19 pandemic and the services they're providing
Right.
while also exposing themselves to
Right, because I know we did recognize volunteers in conjunction with, I guess, their month, National Recognition Month.
National
I'm not sure
Volunteer
exactly
Month
what
was
it's called.
April. And so
Right.
we did a proclamation recognizing, thanking our volunteers
Right.
within that proclamation.
Yeah, but now I hear Mr. Johnson saying that there is a day for 911 dispatchers that you would like that to be. So that would be somewhat separate, and then our medical personnel and our volunteers who helped with the response to the pandemic. Does that sound like that's on target with
And-
what you were thinking about, Ms. McCoy?
Yes, that is, but I wanted to include, I know some citizens that have volunteered out there in every setup for, giving the vaccine. And I highly recommend those citizens, because they're giving up their free time
Right.
to be a service to this county as well as to service to the citizens of this county. It's not many that I know of, but for those that I do know of, I think we need to give some kind of recognition to that type of service.
So then if I say that we would have a proclamation for 911 workers, dispatchers, in association with their day of recognition, let's say, and then we would have a proclamation for our frontline medical personnel in response to the COVID pandemic, and then our Harnett County volunteers in response to the COVID pandemic who worked vaccination sites in various ways to help our medical first line workers.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Paula. I just want to say too, I looked up the National 911 Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, and it was in April. So I think, you were trying to tie it into that. It's actually a week called National 911 Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. So we can use that language for our proclamation.
Sounds great. We'll just be a little tardy, but we'll certainly recognize them. Fellow commissioners, you feel okay with that direction? Okay. Mr. Pell, does that give you a little bit better guidance on direction to proceed in these?
It does, yes,
Okay,
thank you.
great. Okay, anything else on this topic? Thank you for your hard work, Mr. Pell. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Next, we have the county manager's report.
Thank you. The first thing I've got is the meeting agenda review for May 3rd. May 3rd is going to be a very busy day for us. We have a 9 a.m. 9 a.m. meeting followed by an 11 o'clock joint meeting with the Board of Education. So the first agenda we'll look at is the one on your desk, is the draft for the 9 a.m. meeting. We will add, under consent agenda, we will add the bylaws for the Commission on Women and Youth, and we'll add the conflict of interest policy there. And if Mr. Appel gets the proclamations ready, would you like to go ahead and have them on this meeting, or? Okay, so we'll go ahead and add those as well. So back under the consent agenda, the Health Department has received additional food and lodging funds from the state. Our Harnett Area Rural Transit System requests that the board consider and approve supplemental funding through the fiscal year 21 CARES Act in the amount of $312,060, no local match required. Our finance officer requests approval of the contract for the audit firm Martin Starnes and Associates to audit the county's accounts for the period, the current fiscal year that we're in now, July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. Cooperative Extension and the Teen Court at Risk Program requests approval to receive additional funds in the amount of $2,000 to be used for COVID-19 protective gear. We'll talk about appointments in a moment, and then we'll have Victoria Witt, the Executive Director of the Sandhill Center, will be here to present her funding request and program update. And then Forest Ranger, the County Ranger Buren Fulmer will be here to give the Forest Service update, their funding request and program update. We'll add the FBO item after that, and then followed by the County Manager's report, new business, closed session, and then we'll go into a recess to reconvene downstairs in the larger room. We'll have half of that room again, and Board of Elections will be in the other half. So we're going to have limited participation at that meeting, and we'll make sure we get that word out to the public. There won't be room for the public, but we will have listening options available for it. So then, if you will, is there any questions about that agenda? And I think at this time there are no appointments. Again, there's no appointments this time. We're still looking for certain people. So anybody listening to this work session, feel free to go out and look at the appointments that we have that we need on the various boards. So the May 3rd, 11 o'clock joint session between the Harnett County Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education. We have a very busy schedule that day. We will serve lunch and keep working, work through lunch. We have the first thing that'll happen, Dr. Fleming will give his presentation of their budget request. We have Adam Mitchell coming from Tharrington Smith to give an update on how we need to be thinking about redistricting after the 2020 census. Tom Hughes with SFLNA will be here to give a school construction update. We will talk about future school facility needs. We will talk about the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. It's called ESSER funds. That's the COVID money for the schools. Harnett County financial update will be given by Mitch Bergoglio with Davenport and Company. And then we'll be discussing the possibility of a 2022 school bond referendum. We'll go into closed session, we'll come out for new business, and then we will adjourn. So any questions or comments about that?
Oh, as far as the timing on the meetings, once our meeting here at 9 o'clock go with, does this go immediately after that or wait till 11?
11 o'clock.
You notice it immediately after.
We need to change it to, it'll be 11.
It's my understanding that they're not meeting at 9 o'clock.
They're not. They're not. They changed their mind. They were going to meet that morning as well, but they're not meeting that morning. They're meeting another day.
If we get done quickly, which looks like we will, we just sit around for an hour.
We do, because we needed a firm time to start. I mean, I can ask them we can ask them to move the time up, but generally we have a lunch meeting. Usually it's 11:30, so we did move it up to 11.
Again, I'm not suggesting one way or the other.
Okay. We'll change it to read 11 a.m. And that's all I have for those agendas. If they look okay with you, we'll get those worked on and finalized.
Thank you. Any questions about the agendas, comments?
I do have one about the appointments needed. I know it says Board of Equalization Review in District 2 has been on here a pretty good while with nobody taking it. Just wondering, is this advertised on the website and
It
in
is.
the newspapers?
I'm not sure about the newspaper. We can check on it. I know we do publish them on social media and on the website.
Okay. I know
We'll double check.
That's a strong board, so probably needs to be in the newspaper advertising.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Ms. Stewart?
Yes, I have. The next thing is the update on the one-time benefit supplement. You asked me at the last meeting to come back to you with numbers for the classified personnel at Harnett County Schools, to include them in any one-time supplement we would possibly consider giving. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on who are classified personnel. I know several people have asked me that question. So teacher assistants, administrative assistants, maintenance staff, transportation staff, custodial staff, school nutrition staff, bus drivers, and bus monitors are included as classified personnel. I got numbers from Harnett County Schools Finance Director Tammy McGill on this, and so there are 815 full-time classified employees. So the $500 bonus, the $1,000 bonus with benefits would be $1,054,039.50. And then they have 7 part-timers that are classified, and that would be $3,767.75. So the total for all classified for the school system would be $1,057,807. And I didn't do the change. I rounded up. And then for Harnett County, it was 1 million. We have 849 full-time and 170 part-time. And our total would be 1,118,857. So that'd be over $2 million, which we do not have enough funds for that in our current displaced COVID money.
Repeat those numbers, please.
Okay, which one's the Harnett County? There's 849 full-time employees, 170 part-time. Total $1,118,857.
Do you have that? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. McCoy, I didn't know you weren't finished.
Do we have that kind of money in the,
We
fund
don't.
balance now, since we have, given out so much money because of this COVID?
Right, we had around $1 million left over, and there's a lot of things we can do with it. This was just one of the things I was recommending do, but that's totally up to the board. So this was just, so we don't really have enough to do it. So then I backed off and thought, well, what's an alternative? Giving a $500 bonus to everybody. So we ran the numbers for that just out of curiosity. So the school systems, if we gave everybody $500 part-time and full-time, their projection is $531,546.30, and Harnett County would be $605,180.
And, excuse me, Mr. McCoy, are you finished? I'm sorry, with this
Yeah,
one.
I'm sorry.
So you said, how much money do we have in displaced COVID money at the present time?
There's around $1 million, 1.1, somewhere in there. So, again, we don't have to do any of this. This was just an idea. So it's totally up to the board what that money's used for. You can put the money back in fund balance. You can use it for any other one-time purchase, anything that a capital need.
So, Ms. Honeycutt, do you have that total for $500 for each employee off the top of your head, for county and?
Well, if you add those two numbers together, it's about, well, go ahead, Kim. Let her do the math.
Be 2.2
yeah, 2.23 million. My number.
Well, let me add here.
And I'm sorry, I didn't total those up.
So I get 1.136726
You looking for both of them?
for $500.
The $500 one, if you'll add, Kimberly, 531, let's just say 547, and 605, 180.
That's for the county?
The 605, 180 is the county, and the 531, 547 is the school.
You do both of them together. I mean, 1,136,727. I got that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's what I got.
Okay.
So if we look at $500 for each employee, then we're certainly in the ballpark.
Correct.
Okay.
And you don't have to make a decision today, but but if we do it, we would need to do it by June 30th, just because that's where the money is in this fiscal year.
Any thoughts, or Ms. McCoy?
Well, I think that we had good intentions. But I do know that at this day and time, since we've been in this pandemic and all, any amount of money that we can give our citizens that work for the county, serve the county, would be appreciated, even if it's not $500. Whatever we can give is money that they could use. That would be all I can say.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. I certainly echo that sentiment. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments?
Question from Kimberly. What was the total amount for $500 for each county and school employee?
For county schools, I've got a calculator in front of me, I have to, it's compulsive. For both together would be 2,176,664. Let me read those numbers back. I had 1,057,807 for the schools, and then 1,118,857 for the county. Totals to 2,176,664.
Okay, would you read that separately, please?
All right, 1,057,807 for the schools. And then 1,118,857 for the county.
Thank you, ma'am.
And that's for the $1,000 full-time, $500 part-time. Would you read us the total for the $500 across the board, please?
It would be 1,136,727.
And the only other question I have, if you are going to consider it, is do you want to make it, are there any stipulations, like the person had to be here during the pandemic? Because there'll be some people that have been hired recently. So is there a time frame you want on it or not? That was just another question I was asked by the school system, and I did not know.
Any thoughts on that, fellow commissioners?
I have one more question, Commissioner.
Yes, yes, ma'am, Ms. McCoy.
Those last figures that you read out, that would take care of that money, that CARES Act money, right?
Yes, that would be the remainder of
That was
the first
the
round of CARES
remainder.
Act funding, right?
Well, I think I would like to see us put this on the agenda for next week to explore the second option you gave of the $500 per employee. And if, Ms. Honeycutt, if you could, get a firm number on the displaced COVID money. And I think we have a firm number on the bonus money. And then, just rough figures, looking at what we've been told this morning, that's really close. But if we do not quite have enough displaced COVID money to meet that, how much that would be, some suggestions about where we might be able to find that to supplement to get to the 1.136. And if staff would work on some suggestions regarding qualifications, if you will, specifically addressed in the question you just asked on hired date, that sort of thing. I think at at least from my perspective, I would like us to pursue discussion on that with possible action.
We'll take care of that.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to review applications to serve on boards and committees. I
There's
believe
not any.
You've already done
Yep,
that.
we've already done that. And so the upcoming meetings you have before you, as a reminder, Monday, May 3rd, again, we have a 9 a.m. board meeting, followed by an 11 a.m. joint meeting and lunch with Board of Education downstairs. And then we're back to our regular, on May 11th, we'll have a work session to discuss budget. And also, I wanted to I've heard from several of you, but I haven't heard from everybody. Is everybody available the afternoon of May 17th from 3 to 5 for an additional budget work session? And I heard from the chairman and vice chairman, but I didn't know if the rest of you had had a chance to check your schedules. But we need to add another work session to discuss budget if possible.
Yes, May the 17th.
It'd be May 17th from 3 to 5, and we have a regular board meeting at 6.
Oh,
So we would be here, we would just come a little bit early to do a budget work session prior to the May 17th night meeting.
17, 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Did you send that out?
I will. I just wanted to make sure it was okay with everybody before I sent out a confirmation. I didn't want to schedule something and then somebody have a conflict, so. And we'll add it to the upcoming meetings and dates of interest. We'll have to notice it and post it that we're having an additional meeting. We just don't think we can get through everything in one work session, so. And the way the calendar fell this year, if you'll notice on the upcoming meetings and dates of interest, we don't have anything from May 17th until June 7th. So that's like a 2-week break. So that's why we need to try to get this done as early as possible.
Yeah, I thought I must have made a mistake on putting dates in my calendar when I saw that break, but
I did
that's
the same
okay.
thing, yep.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Stewart, could I ask you a question on a little bit of different topic here? As far as the nonprofits that we've been hearing the reports from, where are we on that? Is that going to be
That's
part of
our-
the budget discussions that we have?
That's part of our budget work sessions, it
And I
is.
know, I think Ms. McCoy and is it Mr. Johnson that work on that?
Right, so what I recommended in the budget, just to give you a highlight, I went ahead and recommended what the committee recommended. So I included in the budget to include the whole amount that the committee presented to us. And then the board can make decisions. If you feel differently, you can take things out. But I just went ahead and took their recommendation and put it in there,
Okay, thank you.
the full recommendation. So it was fun. It was actually proposed in there, in the budget.
Very good, and I'm sure Mr. Johnson, Ms. McCoy are well aware of that, but I just wanted a little update on that. Anything else? Yes, Ms. McCoy?
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I'm concerned about, we're spending a lot of money, but where are we on our fund balance? Are we still in line with our fund balance?
We are still within that operating range.
Okay,
We're still.
good news, just want to make sure.
Yes, and for fiscal year 20, I believe we were at 22%. And our threshold is 20, so we're still above our threshold. And that's all I have for county manager's report.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Stewart? Okay, it brings us to closed session. I believe we do have need to go into closed session.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board go into closed session for the following purposes. 1, to discuss certain personnel matters, and 2, to instruct the county staff concerning the position to be taken by the county in negotiating a contract for the acquisition of real property. This motion is made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11A6 and 5.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We'll be moved into closed session.
RSPs for the county manager.